We've been married 4 years, long enough to know her rhythms, how she likes her coffee, the weird little dance she does when she brushes her teeth, the way she hums under her breath when she's concentrating. So when Lila started talking in her sleep, I noticed. At first it was harmless, mumbles mostly, half-garbled phrases like "the kettle's on" or "don't forget the window." Nothing that stood out, just the random discharge of a busy mind. I mentioned it once over breakfast, more amused than anything. "You said something about a boat," I told her. Lila laughed, not even looking up from her cereal. "Maybe I'm trying to tell you we need a vacation." That was a month ago. Since then, the tone changed. The first truly strange night, I was lying awake beside her. Work had been stressful, and I'd started staying up later, doom scrolling or listening to podcasts with my earbuds in. She stirred beside me around 2 a.m., whispering something. I pulled out an earbud and leaned in. "Don't take the Pine Hollow exit." Her voice was distant, almost dreamlike. I frowned. "What?" I asked gently. "Lila?" She didn't respond. Her breathing had already returned to normal. I hadn't mentioned it to her in the morning. Why would I? Just a coincidence. Maybe she saw it on a billboard recently, or maybe we'd driven past it, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Because 2 years ago, I got into a car accident off the Pine Hollow exit. Totaled the car. Told her it wasn't a big deal, just a fender bender. What I never told anyone was that I was drunk. Buzzed, really, but still over the limit. I swerved to avoid a deer and slammed into the guardrail. I kept it buried deep, even convinced myself it didn't count as a real mistake because no one was hurt. But how did she know? The next time it happened, she whispered, "Don't let them find the necklace." That phrase stuck with me. She said it clearly, more urgently than the others. I sat bolt upright in bed. The necklace. Years ago, before I met Lila, I dated someone named Marissa. It ended badly. Messy, codependent, toxic in both directions. After she left, I found one of her necklaces under my bed, an ugly little silver thing. I kept it for years, shoved deep in a box in the garage. I hadn't thought about it in forever. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I went into the garage, pulled down the old moving box. The necklace was gone. I started recording her at night. At first, it felt wrong, like spying. But what else was I supposed to do? I set up a small camera on the dresser, pointed at the bed. The first 2 nights, nothing. Just light mumbling. On the third night, around 3:12 a.m., she sat upright in bed, eyes closed. "Don't go to work tomorrow," she said. I didn't. That was the day the fire broke out. Electrical fire in the break room of the small marketing agency where I work. 2 people were hospitalized. I watched the news coverage from our couch, my phone in my hand, shaking. When I showed her the video the next day, she laughed. "I'm just talking nonsense in my sleep. Come on, that's creepy, babe." "Do you remember saying any of this?" "Number, it's just my brain messing around. But you said not to go to work." "Subconscious coincidence," she replied. "You probably talk in your sleep too." But I never have. It got worse. One night she turned to me, eyes still closed, and said, "Stay out of the basement." That was the same week we started getting a smell from the basement, like something had died down there. I figured it was a dead animal, called pest control. They couldn't find anything. 2 nights later, she said, "He's buried under the roots." I froze. There was a tree growing near the house, right against the back wall of the basement. We'd joked about it once, that it was too close to the foundation. We never did anything about it. I started to lose sleep. I'd lie awake just to listen to her breathe, just to make sure she didn't start talking again, but she always did. Then she called me by a name I hadn't heard in 15 years. "Jamie," she whispered one night. "Jamie, you have to remember, you promised." Jamie was what my older sister used to call me when we were kids, before she died. No one alive calls me that, not Lila, not anyone. I tried to tell myself it was a coincidence, some weird part of my subconscious projected into her sleep talk, but it wasn't convincing anymore. I called her sister one afternoon when Lila was out, asked if she'd ever talked in her sleep before as a kid. "No," her sister said, "never, not once." I started noticing other things. Her handwriting, subtly different. Loopier, almost childish. Her sense of direction, she'd always been terrible with it, but now she knew routes I'd never shown her. She started humming a tune I recognized, an old lullaby my mother used to sing, one I hadn't heard in over 20 years. Finally, one night, I confronted her. "Who are you?" She blinked. "What?" "You're not Lila, not exactly. Are you?" Her face twisted. Confusion, or maybe disappointment. "I told you not to ask," she whispered. I stepped back, and she said something I can never forget. "You buried it, but not deep enough." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the hallway with the door shut, heart pounding like a drum in my throat. In the morning, she was back to normal, cheerful, coffee, a kiss, a quick "see you tonight" before work. I waited until she left, then went to the basement. The smell was gone, but I took a shovel and started digging near the tree roots anyway, hands shaking. About 3 feet down, I hit something, not a body, a box. Inside it, letters, old photos, documents, my original birth certificate, not the one I kept in my drawer upstairs. This one had a different last name, a different first name, Jamie. My name was Jamie. I changed it after what happened to my sister, after what I did. The memories came back like a flood. She'd drowned in the lake behind our childhood house. Everyone said it was an accident. It wasn't. I was 10. She had dared me to swim farther. I held her under too long. I panicked, told no one. And then I ran. Foster homes, therapy, a new identity by 18. I'd buried it all, until now. Last night, Lila spoke one final time. "Jamie," she whispered, "you're almost ready." I whispered back, "Ready for what?" She turned to face me in her sleep, eyes still closed, and smiled. "To remember." I didn't sleep after that. How could I? My wife, Lila, or whoever she was, had been whispering my childhood name, unraveling secrets I buried so deep even I had almost forgotten them. She knew about the necklace, about the Pine Hollow accident, about my sister. She knew everything, and worse. She said I was almost ready. Ready for what? The next morning, I tried to act normal, poured coffee, made toast, kept my hands from shaking by gripping the counter too hard. Lila came in like nothing had happened, still in pajamas, yawning, hair a sleepy mess. Beautiful and terrifying. "Morning," she said, kissing my cheek. "You okay? You look pale." "Didn't sleep well." "Nightmares again?" "Something like that." She didn't ask more, just sipped her coffee and stared out the window, humming that same damn lullaby again. The one my mother used to sing, the one I hadn't heard since she died. I excused myself, said I was taking a sick day. She smiled, just a bit too long. "Good idea, you'll need your strength." "For what?" She didn't say. That day, I drove to the town I grew up in. It was 2 hours away. I hadn't been back in almost 20 years. I didn't even tell Lila where I was going. Something told me she'd already know. The lake was still there, still dark and still and sick with silence. The house I grew up in had been torn down, replaced with some lifeless prefab monstrosity. But the tree where it happened, the big crooked birch that leaned out over the water, that was still standing. I walked down to the shoreline, stood there, waited. Nothing happened. But I felt something, a weight, like the air had thickened, like I was being watched, not by a person but by the past itself. And I remembered the last thing my sister ever said, "Hold me under. I want to know what it feels like." She had asked for it, a game, a dare, but I hadn't let go. Not until it was too late. That night, I drove home, numb. I didn't tell Lila anything. She didn't ask. We went to bed. The silence between us was heavy, and just past 3 a.m., she began to whisper again. This time I didn't flinch, I didn't freeze. I listened. "Jamie," she said softly, "tomorrow you'll remember the fire." I sat up. "There was no fire," I said too loudly. "Not then." But she kept going. The basement, the room with the red walls, the girl with the cracked glasses. And then I remembered. It hadn't ended with my sister. There was another girl. I don't know how I forgot. My mind must have blocked it out. Suppressed it so deep that even when I changed my name and built a new life, it never scratched the surface. I was 12. A new foster home. The second one after the lake. They had a basement where I liked to hide. One day, a girl from school followed me home. She liked me, trusted me. I remember her name now, Emily. We played down there, hide and seek. I told her it was safe. I told her we'd be fine. But something happened. I don't know what I did. I don't know if I meant to hurt her. All I remember is the sound of her head hitting the concrete, the blood, the way her eyes stayed open, wide. I had locked the door and walked away, and never told anyone. Until now. I couldn't breathe. I sat there in the dark, next to my sleeping wife, feeling like I was falling through time, through space, through myself. Everything she'd said, every whispered warning, every cryptic phrase, it wasn't about her. It was about me. She wasn't warning me of some outside danger. She was preparing me, priming me. The next morning, she looked different, pale, exhausted, like something had been drained from her. I asked her how she slept. She looked at me for a long, long time and said, "I think I've done what I came here to do." "What does that mean?" I asked. She didn't answer. That night, she didn't talk in her sleep. She didn't move, didn't twitch. She just lay there, stiff and silent, until the morning light hit her face and I realized she wasn't breathing. The autopsy came back inconclusive. No signs of trauma, no signs of illness, just gone like something left her. It's been 3 weeks. I haven't spoken to anyone. I don't answer the phone. I just exist. But the sleep talking hasn't stopped. Only now it's me. I wake up in strange places. I say names I don't remember. I hum lullabies I shouldn't know. I whisper to shadows. And sometimes I speak to her, not Lila, the one inside her, the one who wore her face to help me remember, the one who wants me to pay. Because now I know the truth. Lila wasn't possessed. I was. By my guilt, by the lives I buried, by the child I was, the one they used to call Jamie. And he's not done yet.